Welcome, guys. How you doing? All right. So, if you noticed, I accidentally left flipping the snowflakes in the open, which is a template I had made for Misery. So, sorry that there were snowflakes, but as Kat pointed out, it is February.
Yeah, we're still in winter.
We are. And by the way, guys, since I did like such a very casual intro, officially welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds, to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, yeah, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers. But today, I'm joined with my friend Kat, and we're going to be talking about King. Stephen King.
Yeah.
What other king is there?
I
mean,
know,
King
right?
Arthur, get out of here. I don't want to talk about King Arthur.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, good. I just want to make sure that
My
you did.
favorite king.
Yes, your
Stephen
favorite
king.
Your favorite king. And I guess my favorite king too, because I can't think of one that I like better. King. There's even no king rappers that I can think of. It's like, is there like another like more recent person who's not a real king but is called king? No.
No.
I'm sorry already, right off the
King
bat.
of the Hill.
Oh yeah, King of the Hill. I watched that a little bit, but not much. All right, guys, there's some lightness to start things off because this is a very heavy book. So welcome, everybody. Just to set the stage, we are going to be talking about Gerald's Game, the book by Stephen King.
Mhm.
But be warned, we will also be talking about Gerald's Game, the movie. So if you have not seen the movie or if you've not read the book, you might want to step out because step out and step off. No, it just sounded powerful. You might want to step out. No, because there's going to be spoilers. So I just want to give you guys that warning. So it's all fair and square when we start to spoil things that you guys won't be upset or anything like that. I appreciate all of you guys who have been in the Discord with me on my channel Discord who have talked about the book as we went through it. I really appreciate all of you guys. And welcome to everyone in the chat. We've got Jamie, Ashley, and Halco and Bob Apples. Hey, everybody.
Hey, welcome.
So glad you are all with us. It really means a lot.
Yes.
We love when people are live in the chat. It's wonderful. All right. So, guys, shout out your thoughts on Gerald's Game. I didn't take a lot of, screen captures from the Discord or opinions from Goodreads. I have like one review to read. Otherwise, it's all our own opinions, and I would love to read you guys' opinions in the chat. So if you want to share anything that you thought about the book and or the movie, please start typing that up and we'll read it.
Yeah,
So,
sounds good.
Yeah. All right, so let's kind of just set the stage a little bit, Kat. Tell us about the ratings and like about the movie and the book in general. Like, set the stage for us, please.
Well, I think you agree. We kind of talked about this before. We kind of consider Gerald's Game, the book, more of suspense or psychological horror instead of like true horror.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I think, pretty much well received. A lot of critics consider Gerald's Game one of his best written books or one of his well-written books in a while. But I think it's also due to the subject matter and then just for the fact that it is one of his, I think he had written so many books before then, so he's had a lot of practice, I guess. And it was pretty much well received, I think, movie-wise. 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 77% on Metacritic, and 68% of Google users. So I don't think that's too bad.
I don't think that's bad at all. That's actually very good for a movie that could be semi-horror,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, because they probably marketed it as a King movie. People probably assumed there was some horror in it.
More like supernatural,
Right,
as opposed to the type of horror it was.
Exactly.
Or is. The premise is basically that Jessie and her husband, Gerald, go to their lake house for the weekend. They want to get away. Actually, in the book, they go during the week.
Yeah.
Because they know less people are going to be there. But they go away for a little hanky-panky and to spice up their relationship. Unfortunately, he dies of a heart attack. And she is handcuffed to the bed. And a nightmare basically begins for her.
Yes.
A living nightmare.
A super insane nightmare.
Yeah.
So people are saying in the chat right now, Jamie's saying very psychological story. Mm-hmm. Ashley says definitely a heavy Stephen King read. Totally agree with that. Yes. This is one of the hardest books to me to rate because there are some elements that I thought were well done. And I know you're kind of on the same line as me, Kat. This is like a hard book to talk about. It's a hard book for me personally to like give a rating to. I just don't know how I truly feel yet. We've got Benjamin joining us in the chat, and he says, and I do remember him giving me some thoughts like when we were exchanging emails. Benjamin says, I thought it was a really gripping story, a nightmarish, suspenseful scenario, and lots of heavy psychological stuff. I couldn't put it down as a teenager.
Wow.
So
yeah. And I mean, we had this was also our book club, selection for this month. And interestingly, I mean, we only have 2 guys in our book club, but neither one of them came to our meeting. So it was all women that discussed this. So it would be interesting to see what you guys in the chat kind of feel about it from a male perspective, because I know from our discussions we had in our book club, coming from a woman's standpoint, it's really heavy and it's hard to talk about, really hard to talk about. I mean,
yeah, the abusive elements are super hard to read, and just the whole situation she's in is like a very vulnerable state.
Mhm.
And it's like it's hard to read that, like, and anything could happen. And this is kind of fast forwarding to the end, and this is where I'm talking about spoilers. So when she's writing that letter and she says, lucky for me he was into guys, the Moonlight Man.
Mhm.
Because I mean, after we find out as the reader that he's real, yeah, he could have gone and finished what Gerald could not in the
Right,
book.
exactly.
So yes, as a woman, some elements of this book and story are very frightening. But like, I gotta say, Benjamin, like, I liked parts of the story, especially when it came to examining her psyche and to how messed up her psyche became because of that terrible
Mhm.
incident from when she was a child. However, there was other parts that like just felt like a drag to me, like, and it was hard and a slog to read. However, my book club friends, including Kat, pointed out though that the feeling of it going by so slow while you're reading, it kind of helps you put yourself in the mental
Mhm.
state that Jessie is in. Imagine, we're reading a couple of pages of her trying to get water. Well, imagine how she feels. It's a strenuous, stressful feeling. It feels like a slog to her to just get a simple glass of water, a drink of
Mhm.
water.
Mhm.
And so to me, I guess in that way, the pacing fit. But like in an enjoyment standpoint, the pacing was hard for me.
Right,
Just
right.
because especially with Misery, the last half of Misery was like, yeah, yeah. And this was a lot different than that.
Well, and I do agree with you. I do think that the book could have been a little more condensed, a little tighter, especially when you had the flashback of what happens to her as a child. And I think for me, that's only because it was so hard to read that. It's just such a terrible, terrible thing that happens. But
Yes.
I think the reason I appreciated the pacing in the book, because I kind of felt a little bit like you did when I was reading it, but I feel like I appreciated the pacing, and I got that thought after watching the movie, because the movie, obviously, they can't make it as long as how the book was, and I am actually surprised that they were even able to make a movie out of the book. So kudos to Mike Flanagan for that. But it made me appreciate the pacing when I had time to reflect on it, because then that kind of made me realize that the reason why it was so tedious to read through her, trying to get that glass of water, was because it was tedious. It was not going to be something that was just going to be the simple thing, considering how she was handcuffed to the bed, so I don't know.
I understand that completely, but I'm on the other side of the spectrum in that I liked the faster pacing of the movie, and even with the faster pacing overall in the movie, there were still times where I felt like even the movie dragged a bit when it was
Mhm.
the 2 elements of her personality coming out and talking to her in the movie. Even that was a little slow at times. However, I thought they tightened up things, but I am in the minority, in at least in terms of our book club, because the book club, the majority of our club, they were like, no, the movie, no,
Mhm.
like the book is better. And
Mhm.
I'm a film person first and foremost, so maybe that goes into my thinking a little bit, is that sometimes like visually seeing things instead of reading about her trying to get the water, like how it was a little bit faster, I still felt like it was hurting, it was tough, and it was tense,
Mhm.
but it just was quicker. And because it had to be. You can't sell a movie where they're going to be
Right,
doing that
right,
for 10 minutes.
right.
You
It
can't
would not
sell
have
that.
worked.
but
No.
but personally, I liked it, and I thought that it kind of tightened things, and that just, it was better for me in that aspect. But I can see your viewpoint on it too.
Mhm. I mean, that's just what it came out for me for. I mean, for those of you that don't know, Gerald's Game is actually the first of 3 books that have to deal with abuse of women. Gerald's Game was published first, then it was Dolores Claiborne, which is connected to Gerald's Game, and then Rose Madder later on. So he really
and then
does.
if you take Big Driver into account, the short story,
Yes.
that one also has to do with abuse, and that one's a powerful story.
Yes.
Like that one, I love Big Driver. I almost like that story better than this story, Gerald's Game.
Well, Big Driver had a lot of elements to it about setup and how, like, just, I don't know. That would be a whole nother discussion.
Oh, I know. I don't want to get into it, but guys, I recommend that story, but it's hard to read.
It is very hard to read.
Like, there's abuse
and hard
stuff
to watch because they actually have a movie
I
from it.
still have to watch
Yes,
that. Yeah.
I think it's definitely one that you could, but I don't know. This is just it is a hard topic. You know, and one of the things that Kelsi and I kind of talked about, we didn't talk a lot about this in our book club meeting because we were strictly talking about the book. And at that point, Kelsi had not watched the movie.
Yeah, so we couldn't really go into it.
But everyone else had pretty much had watched the movie. And what was interesting was Melissa, who's in our group, had watched the movie prior to reading the book. And then after watching the movie, she was like, "Oh, I like the book so much better than the movie."
She did it like twofold. Like when the movie first came out, she watched it never having read the book, she said. Then she read the book with us years later. It's been years since it's been released. And so then she watched it again and was like, no, I don't know why I liked it in the first place. See, I felt the opposite. I really liked the movie quite a bit, not just about the pacing. I liked some of the changes they made. And I thought that they handled the abuse so well. In terms of they didn't show too much, but you definitely still felt the impact it had on Jesse. I just thought it was handled so well, and it's such a difficult thing to handle. And I do want to address Bob Apple's comment here. It's one of King's most extreme books. One of the flashbacks from Jesse, you know, when she's thinking about the abuse back when it happened, it's very much layman in its tone. And what he means by that, because I know you haven't read Richard Layman, what he means by that is like Richard Layman would go really into depth about like sexual things, and it's very uncomfortable. But you know,
extremely uncomfortable.
It is, but King did it, I think, with class. Like, you know, you have to go there.
Did, but I'm telling you, there were moments where I had to stop, like, and take a deep breath to continue.
Yeah.
Because I did not know how far it was going to go. And what's crazy about it is I read Gerald's Game years ago, back in the 90s, whenever it happened. And I don't know why, but I didn't remember really much about it except that Jessie is handcuffed to the bed and her husband dies. I don't know if I just
I can't believe you forgot all the big, like the dog.
Or maybe it's because it is so terrible to me now. I don't know what was going on in my life at the time. I told Kelsi I wish I would have kept a book journal. I really wish I would keep a book journal of how I feel about books and what I liked and didn't like. And then I could go back when I reread, because literally it was sort of like, I don't remember all of this stuff and it's terrible. And but I think too, I wonder if you like the movie more than the book, because Jesse in the movie is different than Jesse in the book.
Very different. And so is Gerald.
Yes. And so I'm wondering if that has something to do with it. I find that Jesse in the book is not as eager. She's not really on the same wavelength as Gerald about playing this game. I mean, she did it in the beginning, you know, when they were doing it with the scarves and stuff like that. She wasn't really thrilled about it then.
Right.
And then she goes into this weekend and does not seem like she even wants to. I don't even think know why she decides. I think she goes in knowing this is a bad idea.
I think she does. And she's already thinking like all these like toxic things about Gerald. Like she's kind of like on her last straw with Gerald.
I mean, Gerald is yuck. Like in the way book, she describes him, it's like, why are you even with him? Why are you at the lake house with him? Like, because he sounds like a terrible person and he doesn't seem like he cares about you. And it just made my heart go out to her that she's in that situation.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas Jessie in the movie seems like she wants to rekindle something with Gerald. Like maybe their relationship had been kind of stale. And it seemed like, I don't know, she was really all eager about doing it
Yeah.
either, but she didn't seem as grossed out by Gerald.
Not until they started doing it, and it seemed like it was like a rape fantasy to him. And then she was like taken aback
In the book.
in the book and the movie.
Yes.
Because in the movie it goes a little further, and like he's like starting to like really kind of hurt her. He bites her, and that's kind of what, and that happens in the book too. He like kind of bites her, and she's like, that really hurt. Like, what the hell? Like, stop it.
Right.
But the huge difference, which is crazy,
Yeah,
is that Gerald is going to stop in the movie, it seems like.
It does, because when she bites him on the lip, she gets his attention. Because I think both in the movie and in the book, they kind of think that Jesse's kind of, you know, like teasing a little bit, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
However, Gerald in the book is mean to her and starts talking about how she's sarcastic and she's tired of listening to her mouth and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And he's so disrespectful. And that's when we know he is going to rape her. He is going to go as far as he wants to go to hurt her, which is terrible.
Yes.
But in the movie, when Jesse bites him on the lip, it gets his attention. He pauses. You can tell his feelings are hurt. He realizes at that point he's crossed the line, that Jesse wasn't really playing or whatever. Like, she's really serious. She wants to get out of this. Unfortunately, he takes too much Viagra and he has a heart attack.
Whereas in the book, she literally kicks him because he was going to proceed.
Yes. And so it reminds her of what happened to her at the birthday party with her brother, him goosing her. And then she mentions what happens when the sun went out. And so you know that something terrible has happened to her at that point. And like Michelle said, no means no. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what your relationship is. It just means no. And so the Jesse in the book kicks him. He has his heart attack. She does not seem to me, and I could be wrong, she does not seem to be as upset about it as she is with what happens in the movie. And I think it's because she doesn't actually harm Gerald in the movie.
That too, but also just Gerald's nicer in the movie a little bit. Like, they have a laugh in the movie when they're going down, like, we're not taking him home, the dog, which was ironic and a little foreshadowing. Like, we're not taking him in. She's like, I know. He's like, we're not. And she's like, I know. And they're laughing. So, like, there is some love there. And that's why I think she's more upset in the movie. I would love to know why they made this character change with Gerald. Is it because they had to use the actor the whole time as part of her psyche? That they didn't want us to absolutely hate him? Maybe that's why. Or maybe they wanted even more sympathy for Jesse. Like, not only did she just lose her husband, who she did care about in the movie, if we're just talking about the movie universe here, because in the book, it seemed like she didn't care about him much anymore. She was starting to be like, why am I in this anymore? So I think there's all these like conflicting feelings in the movie, because she didn't absolutely dislike him, because she wasn't absolutely disgusted with him. There was still some love there and comfort there. And I think that is kind of a realistic, when you're with somebody for so long, I think that is kind of realistic, that there would be a mix of feelings there, of revulsion. Maybe she was revolted by his jokes that she overheard that she never told him. She was revolted by that he had this fantasy that she never knew about. So she still had problems with Gerald in the movie, but I just don't think
they were not to the same extreme. But also too, I think the way, and I'm just getting this thought right now. I mean, I had thought about it before. Jesse only has her underwear on in the book. I mean, to Gerald, like, that's even worse than Gerald in the movie. She at least had something, you know, that made her appear more sexy, where it just seemed like in the book, it was sort of like he didn't look at her as his wife. Right.
He was just looking at some naked girl.
Yeah, didn't he make the comment about her being like a call girl or something like that in the book?
I can't remember. I know the thing that is frightening about the book, that the movie didn't go, and like I said, the reason I'd love to know why they made this character change was more about sympathies or making her like more well-rounded. Like, I don't know. Or maybe they wanted to focus more on the eclipse and the abuse than her relationship with Gerald in general. Maybe that's why they changed this. But in the book, the scariest part to me, more than the handcuffs, more than anything, was the moment where she's saying no, and he knows she means it, but he's pretending he doesn't know.
Yes, I know.
It's like, you could have your trust in this person. You're married to this person. You exchange vows. There's supposed to be this, trust there. There's just supposed to be like, you will take care of me in sickness and in health. In that moment, he disregards those vows, and it shows you how much of a slimeball he really is. That he knows deep down, and she knows he knows because she knows him. And she's like, he's still going to do it anyway. He's going to pretend like he thinks that I'm playing.
Well, the thing about it is, Gerald wanted to hurt Jesse in the book. I don't think Gerald wanted to hurt Jesse in the movie.
I think he got carried away in the movie with his fantasy.
Yes.
And so that's what's so fascinating. Like, why is he completely different? He's like completely, he's not hateable. He's dislikable in some ways in the movie, but he's not like all out a scumbag, type of thing. And I wonder why.
Yeah, I said Gerald is yuck, all caps.
In the book.
From the beginning to me. He's described as unattractive and a slimeball. And Jesse kicks him with both feet, one in the belly, one in the testicles, hard, and I think he deserved it. Now I'm sad that Jesse was handcuffed to the bed. He could not get out of it after that. But I mean, that was terrible. I mean, I think he deserved it.
So like I could read about her cutting her wrist in the book just fine. I didn't tell you this yet. I almost threw up during the movie. I felt nauseated. That never happens to me. I'm wondering if I'm starting to get like, don't people get more like desensitized? I'm like going the opposite way with horror movies. I should be able to watch anything right now.
Yeah, but the degloving part was...
I almost like wanted to throw... I couldn't even watch it. I didn't even look at it really. Like I was like looking like this and I still like felt nauseated.
Well, but you know what the difference was? In the book, I understood what she was doing. I understood that rationally. But
you didn't picture it really, I guess.
At least me. Kind of didn't picture. I forced myself not to picture it. I kind of forced it that all she did was cut herself and just had blood kind of moisturize her hand. Yeah.
I didn't,
and then the hand slipped. So I kind of like, I read the words, but I kind of just didn't think about it. When you actually saw it, it was sort of like, that is really terrible.
I was telling Paul, like, what's wrong with me? I was like, I can't handle this. Like, and I was like looking away. He's like, who are you? I was like, I don't know. When the flap was spinning, I almost barfed. Just thinking about it now is making me really bleh. And I watch horror all the time.
Barf that way.
Don't worry, I won't barf. But I couldn't even believe it affected me like that. So like that was another thing I thought the movie was like, whoa. I didn't feel that way when I was reading that in the book.
And I do think that's the one big thing that when you're reading, sometimes you can kind of make yourself think of something else. I kind of remember like when Carol in The Walking Dead is like, look at the flowers, when she's about to kill the little girl. But it's sort of like, you can kind of take your mind out and kind of form a different picture. But when you're visually seeing it, it's a little bit different. And you just know what she's been through. And the fact that she has to resort to something so horrific to get free is, I just can't even imagine.
I was thinking to myself, like, could I really do that? I don't know if I'd be strong enough. But then, your will to survive takes over. But still, like, I just like, oh God, that freaked me out. Just thinking about like, could I do like cut my hand to get out of something? Well, yeah,
because once she was out, the skin was just kind of flapping there.
I know. And then, like, I was thinking too, when she put like I didn't feel like this during the book when she was putting the pads on. I was like, oh, even that was making me wince because like I knew what was under the flap,
right?
And I knew like that had to hurt even just touching it, or in the glass sticking out of it. I was like, no, I don't know why it affected me. I really don't know. I want to say welcome to Pax Panic, who's in here. Thank you, Pax, for joining. She says it's strange how things that people have read that they block out sometimes and don't even realize it. She's saying she does that. She's done that before too.
Well, and I'm really wondering if, let's think about this. I mean, in the 90s, I was in my 20s. So, I don't know.
Just totally different perspective in life,
I guess so. And I, was a pretty young mother at that point. My son was born in 89 and, so I just kind of think, what is it? Because the things I didn't like about it are the things that pretty much I blocked out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you got to think about it. Yeah. I mean, I'll be quite honest with you. The sexual abuse of the child. I mean, as a young mother, that's definitely something I would not have wanted to happen to my child or any child, actually. I mean, I'm an educator. It's a horrible thing.
Yeah, and it was described in a lot of detail. As Ashley says, King's definitely a descriptive writer, and like that part was hard for her too. But she also mentions the dog part too.
Oh well, I put down there scenes with the dog. It made me so angry that somebody could do that to their dog, leave the dog out there to starve, and then the dog has to resort to eating a human being, and then the dog ends up getting killed because of what he does to survive. That just made me totally upset, and I'm glad that they didn't go there with the movie with all of that, because at least Jessie had some kind of a little relationship with the dog. She didn't seem as angry with the dog quite as much as she was with the dog in the book. Of course, she, doesn't know anything about it. She feels sorry for it, and she isn't happy that he's eaten Gerald, but at the same time, it's
her own
different.
persona in the movie and in the book says he's doing what he has to do to get by, and now you need to.
Right.
So I thought that was a good way of explaining it, and like kind of, I think that was a good way of handling it, especially in the movie.
I didn't remember the length of time reading about Jessie's mental anguish, everything she had to go through, all the voices, pitting themselves against what she should do and what she shouldn't do. And the fact that she was having to be forced to think about that day, which if you think about it, that day helped her survive.
Yeah.
Because that's how she came up with the whole
The
idea of glass,
at least
cutting her. Yes, because
that's in the book too.
yes,
I
because
can't
what
remember.
happens is the father tells her to be careful. She has to wear the gloves, the mitts, the
Oh,
oven
it's
mitts,
a different way. Okay, yes.
so
in the
that,
movie, she breaks a glass in
right.
her hand.
Well, what I'm saying is that reminds her when the father tells her to be careful with the glass so it doesn't cut her. And that's where she gets the idea to cut her wrist to do that. And then, I mean, just the deliberate, I don't know, I just appreciated the book a little more after watching the movie, which I said that, but those were just things. And then I totally forgot about the creepy guy in there.
I appreciate the book too more after watching the movie, but because of a different reason than you. Like, you didn't like the movie as much, so it made you like the book more. Me, I had the whole backstory of the book, which enriched the movie for me, and I actually thought it was a great, great adaptation. Like, it's not like a great movie on its, like, maybe I wouldn't have liked it on its own. Like, just if it was without me reading the book.
Without having some kind of backstory is what you mean?
Exactly. Like, me knowing everything about Jessie, it kind of helped me reading the book. I mean, watching the movie. I felt like it gave an extra layer, but at the same time, I thought it fixed some of the problems I had with the book, like with the pacing, like I mentioned before. But also, I liked, now, there's two things about the Moonlight Man, that's what they called him in the book, in the movie. I'm getting book and movie mixed up.
Right, because he was the space cowboy.
Yeah, I'm not singing the song. We were joking about
She
that.
sings the song so well.
Yeah,
I think
all I know is this one part where they make a noise. They go, "They call me the space cowboy." I don't even know a whole sentence to the song. I think that's the song they're talking about.
Yeah, it's a Steve Miller song.
Yeah, that song. The Joker, I think. Is that what it's called? Anyway, I can't remember the name of the song, but yes, that's the only line I know. But in the movie, the Moonlight Man, I liked how in some scenes after she's done with the ordeal and she's trying to sleep at home and she describes seeing him every night, I love how they made his eyes the color of the eclipse.
Mm.
Because to me, it kind of said that in the movie, from that point on, after she escaped and onwards, that he was the embodiment of the eclipse to her.
Right.
Like, so he took on a different meaning besides just himself. It was like he represented the eclipse and everything she had to get over to move on with her life and put not only the handcuff ordeal behind her, but the childhood trauma behind her. And so I loved how his eyes were that color, the color of the eclipse in the movie. But at the same time, I also thought he looked cartoonish at times.
He did. He didn't. I mean, he was creepier to me in the book. Now, there was one part in the movie that really freaked me out. And I hated it so much. And it was creepy, was when she was sleeping and she wakes up and he's like licking her feet or whatever.
Oh my God.
And I'm like,
and it's really the dog though.
And then when the dog, when it's the dog, I'm like, because then I'm like, oh no, the dog is now going to start trying to eat her. And I was like, please don't even go there.
Yeah.
Please do not. It's one thing that he's eating Gerald. I do not want him to try to eat her too. But when that Moonlight guy is doing it, I was just like, he's gonna crawl on the bed and he's gonna get her. And I was like freaking out.
I know. That part was, I agree with you. That part was sick. The licking of the foot.
But I have decided, and I talked about this earlier, I have decided I don't like movies or books, TV shows, anything where someone is just watching you and staring at you, and you're trying to figure out what the heck are they going to do, or like you turn away from them and then they're closer to you, but they haven't talked to you. We have either watched movies or we have read books about it. And it's so uncomfortable because you don't know what to do. And in Jessie's case, she can't do much of anything. I mean, I guess she could kick at him, but really and truly, I mean, he's big. He's much bigger than her.
Yeah.
But it's very, I mean, I don't know. It's just uncomfortable to know that somebody's just in the corner staring at you, and you know that he could possibly help her, and he doesn't.
Well, we don't even know if he's real at that point.
Well, that's true.
But and also he comes to represent death at the same time, like throughout the story in the movie and in the book. But in the book, I thought what was better was that they didn't show his face or describe his face right away.
Right.
They had him in shadows, it felt like, for a lot longer, and she thought he was her father. Now, they do allude to that in the movie in a different way.
Mhm.
He says he's standing by her bed, the creepy guy, and then for a second he says mouse, and he transforms into where he looks like her father.
Right.
So then he starts to represent her father too. So not only death, not only like, oh, am I losing my mind, but also, is this possibly my dad coming back? Like, all of that is hinted at in the movie, but it's described a lot more and hinted at way more heavily in the book. But what the book does better, keeps the guy in the shadows.
Yeah.
Whereas
But
in the
I
movie,
think-
we see his face right away.
But you know what? The whole thing about her thinking that it's her dad too, and comparing it maybe to death, is almost like, I mean, it was the death of her childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically killed her childhood at the point that he did what he did to her.
Yes.
And
yeah.
so she has been living in that state
Yeah.
the whole entire time. It's really crazy. I mean, to think that the father did that. You know?
I know.
And why he chooses her and not the older daughter.
In the book, I think in the movie she's the
younger.
oldest.
Yeah, she's the oldest.
Yeah.
But then also too, you know, and then there's nothing, of course, with the son. But it's just, I don't know what his motivation would have been. You know, it's just so bizarre to me. Unless, like, they were having family problems. He and his wife were having problems. You know, but
it's just weird that it happened that once. It's like, how did he let it get there, and then he like doesn't even do it more?
Right.
It's just it's a weird situation. It's a terrible situation, no matter how many times it happened.
I know.
But it's very creepy. Like you said, it's like he must have gotten to a point where he was so, in his mind, desperate, but like nothing excuses that. Nothing.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about a little more about one of the comments, because it's the same comment that connects Dolores Claiborne as well.
Okay.
But I wanted to read this to you. Kelsi gave me this great book, Stephen King, American Master. And
there it goes.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
and I had used it to get a little bit tidbits last time when we talked about Misery, but they have something in here. You know, I had mentioned that this was the first of the 3 abused women themed novels. Stephen King was in an interview, and I think you might find this interesting because it went into the thinking of how he went about trying to see how Jessie was going to get out of her situation. It said in a 2006 interview with the Paris Review, King described the research process for Gerald's Game. Gerald's Game is about only one person, Jessie, who's been handcuffed naked to her bed. The little things all get so big, the glass of water and her trying to get the shelf above the bed to tip up so that she can escape. Going into that book, I remember thinking that Jessie would have been some sort of gymnast at school. And at the end of it, she simply put her feet back over her head, over the bedstead, and wind up standing up. About 40 pages into writing it, I said to myself, I better see if this works. So I got my son, I think it was Joe, because he's more limber of the 2 boys. That's Joe Hill, for those of you that don't know. And I took him into our bedroom. I tied him with scarves to the bedpost. My wife came in and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing an experiment. Never mind." Joe tried to do it, but he couldn't. He said, "My joints don't work that way." And the only thing you can do at that point is say, well, I could make her double jointed. Then you go, yeah, right. That's not fair.
Yeah.
So I thought it was pretty interesting that
he was even thinking about the plausibility about all of it.
And what she would have to go through to actually get out of it. So I do like the fact it would have been too easy for that. I mean, really and truly, I think anybody would have read it or even watched the book would have been like, really? I mean, come on. I mean, I think you would have lost, credibility at that point as the writer or whatever. But anyway, I just thought that was pretty interesting to know that he did an experiment with Joe Hill.
I like that a lot. Especially because we like Joe Hill.
So yeah, we love Joe Hill.
By the way, welcome Dana to the chat. So glad to see you, Dana. Also, Ashley says about the Moonlight Man, I really thought for a while he was a figment of Jesse's hallucinations. I really thought he was the Grim Reaper. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And she also points out that her relationship with her mother was bad as well. And that was almost like just as much upsetting as the abuse, because it was like an emotional abuse on top of the physical abuse, because the mom just was like really, it's like almost like she knew something was going on, but was just wanted to be mad about it. Well,
and it made me
instead of doing anything for Jesse.
And I have to say, I was disgusted when she did make the comment about how, you almost treat her like she's your girlfriend. I hated that. I just felt like,
it's obvious she knew something was up with her husband and being inappropriate, but she didn't care enough to stop it.
Right.
Like, she was more about jealousy than like protecting her daughter.
Right.
Like, that was what the
Unless
part was
she
terrible.
Obviously thought Tom would never cross the line and do something like that. But
maybe, but then her throwing the shoe, like, what did that mean? It's almost like she knew there was something, and that was her taking it out on Jesse.
Right.
Like, as if it was Jesse's fault. And that's how the dad manipulates Jesse in the bedroom, which is like another freaking scar and really terrible situation for her to have to go through. That whole thing in the bedroom where he's manipulating her to keep the secret for him.
I was so afraid. I was so afraid when he walked into the bedroom on her when she was trying to get dressed that something, like, he was just going to take it even further.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, please, God, no, please don't let it be that. But then also, too, the dad knew that Jesse was more than likely listening to the conversation between him and his wife.
It's apparent in the book that he's pretty sure she was listening.
And I don't know. It just made me so sad for her. It made me sad for her because she was so young. She was 10, I believe, in the book, almost going to be 11. To think that she would have to live the rest of her life in that situation and having that secret. Now, if I'm not mistaken, didn't the daddy die when she was around 15-ish?
No, I thought he saw her graduate either high school or college.
Okay.
Because she talked about that. I distinctly remember in the book, she talked about how he gave her a hug when she graduated, and he did it like he didn't want his lower half to touch hers.
Right. Okay.
Because he was very cautious from then on. It's like, why would he do this to his daughter? Like, why would he do this? Like, I don't know. It's horrible. And then he makes her keep the silence all those years and basically ruins their entire relationship.
Exactly.
Their whole life.
Yeah. And like, actually ruins Jesse's relationship from that then
with other men.
For anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she really can't get close to her girlfriends.
Oh, that too in the book.
Because if anything ever comes up about it, I don't know.
He even said, like, if your friends, you might want to tell them, or your sister, you can't ever do that. It's total like manipulation 101.
Right.
And it's like the dad was so calculating, like, just for this one time. Like, why would he do this? I'm not saying it would have been worth it if he did it many times. I'm just saying I don't understand him as a person.
No.
It's like, what drove him, like, past that point?
Yeah, because he was calculating, because think about it. Yeah. I mean, he specifically wanted her to wear the sundress.
And he knew it was short.
Right.
And a dress.
And knew that they were thinking about sending it back.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's awful. The whole thing around.
The whole thing is awful. And it's so detailed in the book. That's the thing.
It is.
It's very hard to read that part. And that's why I think the movie, another reason I like it, like I said before, I thought they did that really tastefully. I really do. I think they did it the best way that they could. Because you can't show that. You can't show
Although
that.
I have to say, I was really very sad that Elliot from E.T.
I can't even believe it. When you told me it's the same actor that played Elliot from E.T.
Had to be the dad. I mean, not that I think anybody, I mean, it was just like, oh no, terrible. I can't look at him the same way.
And I'm going to watch E.T. this year. Thanks for ruining E.T. I didn't even think that was the same actor until Kat just pointed it out before we started. So yes, the same actor. I can't
wait till we talk about the actor stuff, because I have some tidbits about that.
Nothing's as shocking as freaking Elliot being the disgusting, gross dad.
The terrible dad.
Yeah.
But I just want to talk about the dog really quickly.
Oh,
okay.
Yes.
Why is the dog even in the novel? Okay. That I really had to think about that. Like, why did they have to do that?
I have a theory.
but anyway, I put that the dog is abandoned by the father of the little girl because he's too cheap to pay the fee to own him. He's left to starve and does the unspeakable to actually survive. The dad is a lawyer. Make that note. The dad who leaves the dog is a lawyer. What is it about lawyers? Because Gerald was a lawyer.
In the book and the movie, lawyers are bad people, apparently.
Jesse,
no offense to
now
lawyers.
this is what I say, okay? This is why I think Jessie is abandoned by her father, more or less, than physically by her husband, because they are both scumbuckets. That's what I wrote. Jessie is left to do the unspeakable to survive in both cases, with her father as well as with Gerald. Now, I was a little confused about this, and I did not have time to go back and check, but I wanted to say that I thought Tom, her father, was a stockbroker in the book, but was a lawyer in the movie.
Yeah.
So all these connections with lawyers. But then I added, the dog adds to the horror of the situation.
That's what I think it's there for. But
I
also,
just felt bad, and I don't want people to demonize dogs because of that situation.
But I also think it was a symbolic part of the book. Like, it's very apparent in the movie when they say he's doing what he has to do, you have to do what you have to do. To me, right there, that's like symbolism,
it's survival,
and a metaphor, like
survival of the fittest.
Yes, exactly. It's a very like literal example of, okay, he's eating a person, you've got to cut your hand, like really bad, to get out of this situation. So I think in multiple ways it played a role, the dog being in the story, and he has used dogs in his story, Cujo, before.
Oh no, which is sad.
Dogs. I mean,
which we are going to read about Cujo later.
We're going to. That's one of our Year of King reads for August, I think.
Yes,
I can't remember.
Yes,
yes,
August.
Yes. So I think the dog did have a role to play, and like I said, it kind of brings the horror into the story a little bit sooner than the man, and a little bit sooner than the cutting of the wrist. It's like you had to have something. Like, in fact, before we got to the dog, I was like, this whole thing's gonna be her just sitting there thinking.
Well, but you know what really was freaky about the whole situation with the dog too was the dog could sense the space cowboy guy.
Yeah, and was
afraid of him, and look at what he did. I mean, he was surrounded by death. So like the whole take about being the Grim Reaper or being death was the fact that he was so fascinated with death. I mean, he was a necrophile, and
so in a way he was kind of like a Grim Reaper, because he was like, he loved dead people. I mean he did. The Moonlight guy, he loved being surrounded by death.
Those dead people
too.
I
mean, yes, he loved
gross.
And didn't he have a penis necklace or something?
Yes, he did.
But in the movie he had ears,
and then he had the worst part. Then this was hard, and I almost wanted to barf in this, was the fact when the policeman went into the cab of the vehicle, the van or whatever, and found the tongue sandwich.
Sandwich for the Moonlight Man we're referring to. Yeah, that part was gross too. But I like how, to me, it gives a little bit of a reason for him to be randomly in her place. I feel like he was drawn there by Gerald. Like, maybe he didn't know, like, when the door was open, he goes in, sees a dead guy, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna chill here. He likes dead guys. I mean, he really likes them.
That's true. He could have taken Gerald. Could you imagine?
Maybe Gerald's penis wasn't even there.
If he would have drug Gerald out, and then he and the dog would have had to fight over Gerald.
Oh, that would have a brawl for Gerald. That's great. I want his penis. I want his meat.
Just give me his tongue.
No, or give me his tongue. It's ridiculous. Of course, I'm bringing penises into it. Whatever.
Of course you would.
Just we're hearkening back to Rotten Tail.
That's right.
Which is, guys, if you don't know, this is a whole inside joke thing now. But Rotten Tail, there's all kinds of stuff in that movie about wieners and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. We had to watch it, and we didn't know it was going to be there. But I will say, so what I meant was, to clarify my statement, I said Gerald's penis definitely was there because they didn't find anything out of the ordinary on his person when they examined his body.
That's true.
That would have given away that guy was there already.
Yeah.
But I was like, why was he there? But in my mind, it's like he was there because maybe he was drawn somehow because death, and he loved to be around dead bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how he would have discovered there was a dead body, except for he just happened to walk into this open house.
Well, but if you think about it, and this might be a little far-fetched, is, like in mythology, what do you have to give to cross the river Styx?
I can't remember. What do you have to give?
I don't know. What do you have to give? Don't you have to give something like shillings or?
Oh, it might be shillings.
Okay.
Yeah,
what did she give? She gave the rings. She
Oh,
gave the rings to get out.
it was like her passage to stay alive.
Yes.
Instead of to
Maybe. Do you
die.
think? Do y'all think that was too far-fetched?
No, I actually no,
I just had that moment, that
no,
epiphany.
I saw that symbolism, especially in the movie when it's so clear. She like hands him, and then she's allowed to leave. And so she saw him there for real, but in the car he was a figment because she was losing
Well,
it.
yes.
So I thought that that's how it was in the book too. In the book, I truly believe that he was never in the car. He was though there when he took the ring.
I didn't think so either. And I really kind of wished in a way he wasn't like real at all. I mean, I'll tell y'all that later, but I mean, we learned that, you know, he's a serial killer, a grave robber, a necrophile. He's a horrific person. Well, he's a hideous person that does horrific things. I think he was scarier in the book than in the movie. In the movie, he seemed more cartoonish.
I do agree with that, but I like
except
the
for the
eye
whole
thing.
licking the foot part.
Oh, that part was
that
really
really
bad,
freaked me out. I hated it, and now like I will not sleep with my feet exposed.
I don't like doing
For
that
fear,
anyway.
I don't either, but now I even don't want to do it even anymore
And there's
because
more
I don't want
reason.
anything
Cover your feet.
look at my feet.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, by the way, Ashley says yes, they put coins in the eyes of the dead.
Okay.
So there you go.
Because they do that in Charles Dickens. Remember how when his partner died in Christmas Carol.
Yes.
You know, they put it on and then he took the coins off. So then he couldn't really, I guess, cross the river Styx. But I wonder if the rings represent what she needed to have the passage.
But for her, it's the reverse. She stayed living. She was able to cross back, almost back into the land of the living, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess it does make sense. But
I love how you can glean so much. See, I start to like a book more when I discuss it in depth. And after I just read it, I'm like, I don't know. And I really just take it as pure entertainment value. Now, I want to harken back to one of Benjamin's comments earlier. He said, you know, he found it really gripping because he just wanted to see how she would get out of that situation. And I could see that too. And it's like there was an element of that underneath for me. That was a thread running through my reading experience. However, that thread wasn't strong enough to keep me barreling away and like excited to turn the next page because like of the dragging of everything. But like you said, you thought there was a reason for that because we were sitting there agonizing with Jesse.
I did. There were times where I just felt exhausted while I was reading it.
And you're supposed to feel that way, I think. I do think that. However, when I go to rate the book and then I'm like, well, but I really had a struggling time reading it, that makes me want to rate it low. But then talking about all these psychological factors and these symbolic meanings makes me want to rate it higher. And then we've got our friend Melissa, who was in our book club meeting, and she had the most fascinating viewpoint on the whole thing. She says, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially the gist of what she said was that she felt like this book was a love letter to women by Stephen King. And you know what's funny is after she said that, like, it's kind of true. It's like you wouldn't necessarily even know that this was written by a man if you didn't know before going in that it was written by Stephen King, because he really was very respectful to what a survivor would have to deal with.
Yes.
Somebody who survived abuse. And
that's why I think when you say that he handled the, you know, the situation with the father, handled it a little more classy.
Well, then like Richard
Lehman, because he took that in consideration. We also, we pointed out, somebody in our club meeting pointed out that the dedication in Gerald's Game was to his wife Tabitha and her sisters. And in Dolores Claiborne, the dedication is to his mother.
Right. So it's like women are the
I do think
here.
you know, even though it is a story of abuse and it is, you know, a problem with how women, you know, are treated. I had written that somewhere too, in my notes. You know, I think he has compassion for that. I think he has compassion for women.
I think he does too. And I think that's very much apparent when you read the book. I do think it's like a very, in fact, I want to point to what Benjamin says, because this is exactly what our friend Melissa was saying. And I told Melissa that I thought Benjamin was on the same page as her. So yes, I mentioned you in my book club, Benjamin. Because we were all wondering what a guy would think of it, because we were all women. So Benjamin says here now, he says, she was so vulnerable throughout the whole story and it scared me to death. And I also think it's really cool how she turned that vulnerability into strength and survival. I love that take. And that's just the type of thing that makes me want to rate it higher, because I can see that. I can see that she kind of looked at her abuse in the face and spit in it. Because,
Yes.
especially in the movie, the guy, the Moonlight Man, comes to embody the idea of her abuse, and she is
And I
triumphant
do
over
think
that.
that's probably why at the end she spits in his face,
Yeah,
because she triumphed over it.
right. And she's putting it behind her, like, you will not define me. You will not keep me up at night. I control my own life from now
Exactly.
on. And
Exactly.
she means that literally with the guy, but also metaphorically, like with the abuse. She's trying to get past that now. And I do think, oops, sorry, I dropped my water bottle over here. I do think that that is a strength of the book. But when I was reading, was I seeing that though and experiencing that and feeling that way? No, it's not till afterwards. So that's why I'm torn about ratings. That's why I get torn.
It is hard. It is hard until you can have a good discussion about it and kind of look at different viewpoints about it. I feel differently about Jesse than I did when I first started reading. I feel differently about Jesse after watching the movie. And while we're talking about that, let's talk about her inner psyche. Okay, just for a second. In the book, Jesse has 4 voices really talking to her. And we're not even going to get to Dolores Claiborne yet, but you have Goody Burlingham, or the good wife. She's the good girl version of Jesse, the play it safe, don't rock the boat, go with the flow, do what Gerald wants, do what your father wants, kind of thing.
Right.
Okay. Don't play it safe. Don't try, to buck the system, kind of thing. Then you have Pumpkin, which it's Mouse in the movie. That's Jesse as her 10-year-old self. She is looking at her and what she has to deal with. And Pumpkin also is the one that reminds her, remember that you have to go back to that moment with the eclipse, because there was something really important. And that's what reminds her about the smoke to glass cutting her. You've got Ruth Neary, Jesse's college roommate, who pushed Jesse too far to reveal her childhood secret. At that point, if she would have confided in Ruth, she may never have met Gerald. She may never have married him, because she would have come to terms with it. But she was so afraid of what her father had instilled in her at that moment in the room.
Don't reveal.
And what the good wife part of her was telling her not to reveal. I think the embodiment of herself in the movie is Ruth.
I think that too. I do think that, because it was more like her inner strength, or what, and she was a little snarky, she was a little kind of like fiery, which reminds me of how Ruth is in the novel.
Exactly. And then you had Nora Callahan, that was Jesse's therapist, who questions Jesse's relationship with her father. And then she stopped seeing her because she was also pushing the envelope about what she just did not want to have to come to terms what anyone had happened to her.
I mean, that's what her father did. That's like another horrific part of it. Her father ingrained this be quiet silence into her so heavily that like she literally like cut people out of her life. Anyone who got close to possibly knowing the truth. That's how ingrained it was in her. He was so manipulative when he made that deal with her, because he knew she didn't want to tell the mom, and he had no intention of ever telling her.
And how sad that she ended up marrying somebody who was just as manipulative.
I know.
That
is like the sad part, really. It really is sad.
So, talking about the voices in the book compared to the movie, you liked that Gerald was one of the voices.
I liked that it made sense to the viewer. If you were just a moviegoer, to me, it's like you couldn't have introduced Nora. You couldn't have. It would have taken so much backstory to have like 4 different characters. But Gerald, I thought was the negative. It was like the goody.
The goody.
The goody.
So
voice.
I do think, in that respect, if you have read the book, you can make that correlation or that connection.
But if you were just watching the movie, I don't know, because it was kind of sympathetic.
It would almost be like the devil and the angel kind of thing.
That's what I even just said that to you. Like, I did get a little bit of the devil and the angel. However, there were some parts where Gerald was the psychic Gerald, like, the part that's not the real Gerald. He was like, you never told me about the eclipse. Like, so that's the part where it like breaks, where I don't think that matches very much. But I guess she's putting the voice in her head, she's giving it like Gerald's personality.
Unless Gerald was the therapist.
Oh, that's true too. But he was a little harsh at times. That's why I thought he was more Goody.
Well, maybe he was a compilation of Goody and the therapist.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, he was the therapist if he didn't know the
And
revelation
he
about
wished he
that
knew.
part, but then Goody about you're not going to be able to do this because look, you couldn't handle all this
So
anyway.
they basically just wanted to condense the personalities, I
Yes,
think, for the
okay.
movie.
I
think that's
agree.
the whole point of why they did just two, and they wanted to use the actors more. So that's, I think, another reason why they didn't go and, you know, create these random characters that they would have had to explain who the hell these people were.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, you could have had it all be her.
Right.
You could have had it be different, like, personalities of her, where it's like literally her as Goody, literally her as, but you wouldn't have had these names, but you just could have had her with different personalities. However, it would have been harder for the viewer to distinguish each role that these voices or personas had.
Now, what did you think about who she was writing to at the end?
She was writing to herself, and
I preferred her writing to Ruth because I was hoping possibly it would open a door for her to be able to have a relationship with Ruth or to start having relationships with women that she wasn't able to because she was married to Gerald and she had
Right.
hid the secret. So to me, it was a way of her maybe being able to move on and become stronger and get her voice. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm torn because I liked the writing to herself because, as Benjamin kind of alluded to, it was like her gaining inner strength, and it was like the kind of embodiment of that. Like, she's writing to herself like, it's okay, we're going to turn the page and get past this. So in a way I liked it, but I also liked her writing to Ruth in the book because, like, you kind of along the same lines of as what you said, it's like she was finally going to connect with somebody she had basically was almost forced by this secret to cut away from her life.
Right.
So it would have been nice to see her get back with that. I understood that, but at the same time, I don't know. I felt like I almost want to read Cameron Chaney's review because he mentions the end and how stuff is revealed and that it could have been done in a little bit better way. So if you don't mind, I feel like this is how I feel about the book and the movie. This is exactly what I feel. So let me show you guys. All right, so here we go. So this is Cameron's review, and he's from Library Macabre. If you guys don't know, please follow him. And actually, we hung out this past week, and we did talk about Gerald's Game because I forgot why we brought it up, but I said something about, like, I haven't watched the movie yet, and he said to me in the car, like, I do think that the movie fixes a lot of the problems with the book. I hadn't seen the movie at the time, so I didn't know how I was going to feel, but I happened to be on the same wavelength, and it was funny because everyone at the book club meeting was saying the opposite, but Cameron rated Gerald's Game, the book, 4 stars. He said, wow, if I didn't know that Gerald's Game was written by Stephen King, I would have thought this was a Jack Ketchum novel. This is an exhausting book. It is tense, heavy, emotional, brutal, and delivers some hard-hitting messages about abuse. I was squirming while reading, so much so that I had to put the book down halfway through and didn't come back to it for nearly a full year. However, in that year, I read a book called The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. You've probably heard of it. After finishing that messed up little volume, I realized I could probably handle Gerald's Game a little easier than I did before, so I picked up the book again and finished it. It was still hard, but I'm glad I read it. Beneath the ugliness of the content is a truly beautiful tale about a woman using her current predicament to make peace with a past that has left her in shackles her entire life. And that's so well said. I
Yes.
totally agree.
I agree with that too.
While the plot of Gerald's Game is one of King's simplest, the endless layers of symbolism say otherwise, and I agree with that as well. It is a very complex story, and it couldn't have been easy to write. But it isn't a perfect book, however. Even though it isn't anywhere near as long as some of King's other books, it could have been even shorter. Many scenes drag on a little too long, and the ending, while surprising, could have been written differently in order to achieve a more emotional effect on the reader. Overall, though, Gerald's Game is a profound, powerful novel, and the movie on Netflix is pretty great too. Give it a shot, but know that it will mess with you a bit. And I thought that was a wonderful review, and, like, I'm on this same exact page. So when he said all these positive things, but then he said at the same time, it's short for King, but it could have been shorter.
Right.
And that's where I agree with him. And I also agree with him in the car where he said he felt like the movie condensed those parts for him, and that's how I felt about it too. But I agree with a lot of the strength of the novel that he pointed out, the complexity, the symbolism, all of that. So well said. Isn't he incredible? Yeah.
Well, but also too, I mean, I'm just like, the more I think about it, because before we even started this discussion and even seeing what some of our, friends, here in the chat are saying too, I feel better about how I'm feeling about the novel. I don't know why. I
Because at
think it's
first you were
because we're
feeling
talking. I
bad.
was feeling bad about it. I was feeling like I don't know how to feel about it. I don't know, but I'm feeling more that, Jessie did triumph, and it's going to take Jessie a while to get to a place where she's going to be better. In the movie, I think it jumps to that pretty quickly, whereas in the book, I think she's going to start healing, but it's going to take longer. It's
Right.
not going to be as,
So you didn't like in the movie how you told me it felt like a Lifetime movie,
well,
whereas like she comes out of the courtroom and all of a sudden her life is great, and we see her 6 months later with the glove, and she's got like
and
a
she's got a therapy group
thing.
and all that kind. I just kind of felt like that just didn't seem realistic for what she had gone through, especially since look at how many years it was for her to come to terms with what happened to her when she was 10.
Well, I think the movie wanted a little more positive spin, a
Right.
little more
Which I accept
immediately.
that. I get that. I mean, I just, I think now I do feel a little bit better about both of them. If
Right.
you want to think about it, that regardless, Jessie is going to be okay. And I think that's one of the things when you first start reading the book, you don't think she's going to be okay. You don't even know if she's going to make it.
Right.
But just going through some of the things, there were quite a few differences, between the two, but there's reasons for that, and obviously it's because I really honestly am really amazed that they were able to make
I read a
movie out of
review
this.
on Goodreads that said this is one King book that will never be made into a movie because he wrote it right when it came out.
Right.
And I was like, haha, like I can't even believe it either. Because after having read the book, I thought to myself, how did they do this? They did a really good job.
Right.
Well, in consideration of what they had to work with, which is so in somebody's head.
Exactly. And that's why it's hard sometimes to adapt King's work, because a lot of stuff does happen inside the character's head and you can't always, show that.
Yeah.
We already talked about Gerald, the differences between Gerald in the book and the movie. We talked about the voices, the differences between the voices in Jessie's head compared to the images that we see in the film. One other difference is in the book, we have images of Dolores Claiborne. We do not in the movie.
No reference at all.
Which I want to talk about that in a little bit too. We talked about Jessie, the differences in her too. In the book, there's really no foreshadowing to the space cowboy. In the movie, there is a little foreshadowing. As they're driving up to the lake house, there's a news report about a grave robber in the area. And so, you're not so surprised when you see him. Well, we're not surprised because we knew that he was in the book, but still, the dog, we hear him in the distance and we kind of get the dog's point of view in the book.
I like that we get his point of view.
Not so much in the movie. Jessie tends to have more empathy for the dog in the movie. I think that the ending in the book is more realistic with how Jessie is handling the aftermath. Whereas I think in the movie, it's a little too easy.
It's too Hollywood,
kind of thing. I liked in the book that she spits in Joubert's face at the end in the courtroom. I thought that was much more powerful than her telling him, "You look smaller than I remember." Although I think she was speaking to her dad, because they showed the dad's face in the courtroom.
And they showed him, they showed the dad and the Moonlight Man kind of back and forth. Like, it's almost like one could represent the other. But I will say about the spitting, I think in the movie, another reason they didn't show the spitting is because it's just, it's unrealistic that nobody would be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why are you here? What's going on? Like, they would question if someone just came up and spit during a court. Even in the movie, I can't even imagine why somebody would be like, you have to get out of here. Why are you here? And she'd be held, because you can't just come up and interrupt a court hearing. But anyway, you got to suspend your disbelief with these stories and movies.
Right, of course. Yeah. And then also in the book, she's only wearing her underwear, where she's wearing the lingerie or the slip. I think it's Gerald's way of demeaning her more in the book, whereas in the movie, it wasn't so much demeaning as it was.
Well, you also think that her being so scantily clad in the book is also more vulnerability.
Yes.
Because it makes it more frightening. You were telling me before we started.
I think it's more frightening. And also, too, you're
almost more scared to get rescued, because then they're seeing you kind of half naked, too.
Yeah,
that's scared. Not saying she wouldn't want to get rescued, but I'm saying that's kind of a hesitancy. It's like, oh God, when someone does find me, I'm half dressed. So it's an extra layer of, oh, this sucks even more.
Right. I think so.
Yeah,
too.
I think so.
So Psychic Connection with the unknown woman.
Mhm.
I found this fascinating. Now, I knew right off the bat who they were talking about.
Yeah.
Because I've read Dolores Claiborne, which is another fabulous book.
The movie is great too. I've only seen the
Yes.
movie. I have not read the book,
I've
but I
read the
want
book
to one
and
day.
I've seen the movie. Kathy Bates is also Kathy Bates is Dolores Claiborne, so another great role for her. We have the connection with Dolores Claiborne on pages 166 and 167 in Gerald's game. Then on pages 183, Jesse's on the dad's lap, and on 200, when she's picking up her slip and spots Jesse looking under the bed, that is actually from Dolores Claiborne. Okay, so that's where they see each other, you know, or make that connection, that psychic connection.
Right.
Both stories were once part of what Stephen King wanted to make a bigger book, and it was called In the Path of the Eclipse. And then he decided to make it separate books. Now, somewhere, and I can't remember where, and I couldn't find it again, he had wanted to do some kind of a trilogy where it all took place during the eclipse.
The same eclipse.
Yes, it's all connected to the solar eclipse of July 20th, 1963. The maps in both Gerald's game and in Dolores Claiborne
Yeah. I'll hold one.
are
You can
the
hold
exact thing. Now, and it's even the style of the illustration
on the cover page.
Yes, is the same too.
You can show that first if you want.
Yes. Okay, so this is Gerald's game.
Right there. And look
And
at
this is Dolores Claiborne. Whoops.
There we go.
Now notice the eclipse on the title page.
Yeah. This is so hard. There you go.
Okay. Yep. And then you can see the cabin by the lake, and then you see, you know,
this cabin here. Yeah. It's just amazing. It's so well done.
And then as you turn, you have the same exact map. You know, and you see where the eclipse is coming.
Isn't that cool, guys?
It is very cool. I think
very well designed.
Because you can also see where Dark Score Lake is, in addition to where they are, Gerald and Jesse, and then where the little island place is across this way. So to think that at the same time these things were happening to both of these women, you know, and of course they're both about abuse, different circumstances. Now, talking a little bit about this, the comparisons is in both Dolores Claiborne and in Gerald's game, you have abusive fathers, you have abusive husbands. Both fathers sexually abuse daughters, and they use the excuse men with needs.
Ridiculous.
Which is terrible.
It's terrible.
There's abuse of women, and then there's the gender inequality in both of them. Now, Gerald's game was published in May of 1992, Dolores Claiborne, November of 1992. And that's because originally
they were going to be together.
Them to be together.
But the length is what stopped it, correct?
The length is what has stopped it. Okay, so now talking about the solar eclipse, that solar eclipse is a real eclipse. It really happened on July. Yes, it is a real historical event. That happened, unlike Cycle of the Werewolf, where he did tell us about how they didn't have a full moon every month.
Yeah.
These things happened at that time. But I just wanted to like give a little information about it because I went down like this rabbit hole, you know, finding this information. A solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, either totally or partially concealing the image of the sun on Earth. A total solar eclipse, which took place in Gerald's game, occurs when the moon's apparent diameter is at least the same size or larger than the sun's apparent diameter, blocking all direct sunlight and causing day to turn to night. Okay. Wow. And so that's why I think the father thought, okay, no one can see me because I'm doing this horrific thing at this time.
Right.
Same thing. Concealed. Dolores Claiborne takes that opportunity to do what she does to her husband, throws him down a well. And that really did happen on July 20th, 1963. It actually happened in Alaska and in Maine, in the United States. Yes.
Which is a big
and
deal.
In Canada. It happened in July when the Earth was furthest from the sun. The moon's apparent diameter was 2.2% larger than the sun.
Wow.
At that point. Okay. So
I like that.
Fun facts here about this eclipse and where it has appeared in other places.
Right.
There was a week, July 15th through the 20th of 1963, that the eclipse was featured in the comic strip Peanuts.
Oh, I have this. Yes.
Linus is demonstrating safe ways of observing the eclipse, and gives all this information. So up there they have each comic strip for each day leading up to it.
That's
and
pretty
he's
cool.
given some information about what you have to do, where you have to be, protecting your eyes. And then the last one, Linus is helplessly left standing in the rain with cloud cover entirely too thick to witness the eclipse.
That's cool.
And so that's one instance of where another part in pop culture. Of course, it was an important event in both Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne.
Right.
It's mentioned in a John Updike's novel called Couples from 1968 in relation to Piet and Foxy. So here's a cover of that book. And then the last time it was featured was in season 3, episode 7 of Mad Men, which was entitled 723.
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be symbolism. This is Don Draper, and it was supposed to be
Don Draper.
It was supposed to be symbolism of Don's mental health spiraling out of control yet again. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. Look at the boxes.
So that's from Mad Men still. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, I just thought that was pretty interesting that Stephen King actually used a real historical event.
Very awesome.
To do that. And also too, thinking about where it takes place. So, there are quite a few stories that take place in Derry. The island that I talked about, Little Tall Island, where Dolores Claiborne takes place, also is the setting for Storm of the Century.
Wow.
Now, there are no other that I know of that takes place where Jesse and Gerald were at, or on Dark Score, Lake or whatever. Mainly his stories are either Derry, Castle Rock, or Jerusalem's Lot. Haven's also been brought up. There's a TV show called Haven, that's loosely based on Colorado Kid, but the Tommyknockers also takes place in Haven. That's listed on that map.
Yeah. Wow.
Derry really gets put firmly on the map in Stephen King's universe when we talk about it, because the majority of the book takes place there. But just another little thing, in 11/22/63, he visits Derry and he runs into Richie and Beverly, and from it.
I didn't realize that he
runs into 1958, and that's how he finds out where Harry's family lives, so that he can stop the murder that happens to Harry.
See, I've seen the show. I've seen the show, but I have not read the book.
So it is pretty interesting. There's several, stories and books that took place either solely in Derry or loosely, but I just think that is pretty fascinating to me. Like I told you, I could do a whole probably video just on locations.
I love that you looked up all this. Thank you. I was like, this is such great fun facts. You're so amazing. Yes.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. But I just thought that was really, really interesting, because even Melissa had brought up in our meeting, she was wondering if an eclipse had taken place in it, and it did not.
Yeah. Okay.
So I even tried to look up timelines to see specifically what people were doing, and I couldn't find anything except that around that time.
So that wasn't in your big encyclopedia.
It's not, because remember, my big encyclopedia stopped in 91.
Oh, so it doesn't have Gerald's Game, darn it.
It does
not.
Or
Dolores Claiborne.
Yes, no, it does not.
So Kat has this whole big encyclopedia where it has all these cross references and stuff, and it's just fascinating. Benjamin didn't know about the peanuts in the Mad Men. He said that was great. Thank you, Ashley, for reporting that spammer.
Yes, I don't want any spammers in here.
No, I already blocked him as well. Also, I thought Ashley had a great statement up above, or comment. She liked Jessie confronting her inner demons and her trauma from her past. That was the part of the book that Ashley liked, because she overcame all of it. I liked it too, because it really, said a lot about Jessie's inner strength that she probably didn't even know she had. She had all that,
right.
She could,
and that she finally could be free.
Exactly. I love that too, because
the handcuffs, do represent,
she was handcuffed.
Yes,
her soul.
She metaphorically and literally did represent something. So it was, and that might be the reason why she didn't even want to have the handcuffs. It was one thing to have the scarves and all that kind of stuff, but the handcuffs were something that she was already pretty much feeling without really knowing that she was feeling.
Exactly.
That.
It was kind of like in the back of her head. She wasn't something she knew she was feeling, but it was there.
Right.
That she felt handcuffed. to the
Exactly.
past. That's great. I didn't even think about the hand. That's great.
See,
That's great.
where are we getting all these little aha moments?
Now, you guys have given your favorite parts and, your criticisms. I would like to hear ratings from all of you guys. I know ratings aren't everything, but I just get interested, out of a 5-star rating, how are you guys going to rate this book in terms of your enjoyment? Me, I'm still struggling. I'm like, after our conversation, I'm like, yeah, like, this is great. Like, it was powerful. But, like, that makes me struggle even more because, like, the experience, I remember reading it, maybe I wasn't in the mood.
It could
for
be
a longer
it
read.
Could be.
Maybe I wasn't like in the mindset.
Well,
of
and also
it.
too, if you remember, you had a very full February coming up with your readathon,
right?
And you
I was
read
trying to get it
Gerald's.
done quick.
Yes, you were reading Gerald's Game in January to try to prep for that. So I'm wondering if you were trying to go faster so that you could get it done.
I think that
prior
is part
to your
of it.
February. So you have to look at it from that point of view. Maybe if you read it again one day, maybe you might change your mind with how you're rating it. I personally rated it 4 stars.
And you still feel good about that right now?
I do, because I appreciate the movie more. I rated the movie 3 stars. And it's not to say I would never watch it again, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that too, but I thought the movie went by fast, which is understandable compared to the book. I think it made me appreciate the book, and I said this before, because it does lead to the exhaustion that Jesse goes through. Why not 5 stars? That was the question I put. I said it could have been condensed, although the exhaustion I felt at times reading mirrored Jesse's exhaustion of the experience. Sexual abuse was very hard to read. Also, Joubert should have been a figment of imagination. It felt like almost like another story. Like, let's add this to. I liked the imagination, or the fact that somebody was there. I liked the footprint in the pearl earring, and the fact that somebody was there, but finding out that he was a real person and he had all this other weird stuff going on.
You thought that kind of like took you out of the story?
It
almost
took
like
me
it could have been
out of,
something
yes,
separate.
I almost kind of felt like that was like a separate thing that he was trying to fit in. And I don't know. I liked the spookiness and the fact that it was another thing that prompted her, that she couldn't figure out if it was real or not, but it's what helped her to even go faster. She knew her time was limited between the dog, because once the dog was finished with Gerald, the dog was going to get her. I also think that because she thought that this space cowboy, death, whatever, that he was going to claim her because she was going to eventually die of dehydration. So I that's what I liked, is that those were 2 things that were getting at her. I liked the fact that you didn't really know.
Right. And then once it was
when you
confirmed,
found out,
like,
you were just like, okay, whatever. And then I don't know.
Well, I didn't mind that he was real. In fact, once Melissa started from our book club, started talking about how she thought he was like a physical embodiment of everything she had to go through, and then he was something that she could confront physically.
Well, yeah,
she liked that element, and she was glad he was real because of that, because it made her even stronger as a person. I could see her viewpoint too, but I could see your viewpoint. Me, it didn't bother me that he was real, but I'm with Cameron. The reveal, in the letter, like, it was just revealed very kind of clunky. The way she was writing, it was like, and Joubert, like, blah, blah, blah. And then it just comes out.
telling the story, like telling the whole story of what, it just kind of felt like.
It was kind of weirdly put in there. Could they have done it differently, where it was revealed differently?
And I think that might be what bothered me about him being real. It would have been different if he was arrested or whatever, but going into it, it was almost like a totally different story. Why are we not reading about his story? Like, I could see if he would have even maybe made a little short story after the fact about this creepy dude. He goes to jail and then he writes a short story about it. I don't know. It's not one that's in my top 10 of King books.
Me neither.
And would not recommend others as a first read. I still enjoyed it though. I did still enjoy it. And then the rest of the things I have to say have to do with Easter eggs, both in the book and the movie, and then about the movie itself. So unless you have anything else you want to say.
I just want to read people's ratings real quick, and then we'll get into Easter eggs and stuff. I do want to point out, because I asked you guys for your ratings, Jamie said she gave it 4 stars. Ashley agrees with me that she had a hard time reading this book. Yeah, it was. I still don't know if it's like a 3.5 rounded up to 4, or is it a 3.5 rounded down to 3. So to me, I definitely think I'm going with a 3.5. Just for Goodreads, since they don't do halves, you either have to round up or down, and that's what I'm conflicted on right now, specifically in terms of me.
Right.
Sergi, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you for being here. He says, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I love the gory aspect of this book, the degloving scene, for instance, and also the scarier parts with the monster in the shadows. Is there any debate as to whether the monster actually exists? Now, okay, we say that it's proof that he exists with the articles that she finds, but what if Jessie still hasn't psychologically healed? What if that also is in her head? Is there any debate that she even goes to the courtroom?
That's true.
Could you interpret it that way, is what I'm asking.
You
could you
I guess you could. Technically, I guess
say,
you could.
well, Jessie's not really still right in her mind. She's still struggling. Maybe she imagined that she read these articles, or maybe it's like, she needs to think he's real so that she can think she can triumph over him.
Well, because if you remember, they didn't find the footprint or the pearl earring when they went.
And they never found any evidence that he was ever there.
And also, Brandon was also like, you don't want to push the envelope on this, Jessie, because otherwise they're going to know that their third person was there. And then who's to say you were not
hiring them to kill
him and in this situation? Because remember, Gerald had a lot of life insurance and she benefited from him being dead. So,
So to me, it's like, it's kind of like, that's a good point. Like, because even though there was article proof, couldn't you still argue that maybe that still doesn't prove really that he
were
was
they the same people?
Yeah, like that's what and especially because the courtroom stuff is cartoony to me and doesn't seem plausible that she would be able to approach and spit on him.
Well, and if you think about it too, there is nothing foreshadowing to say anything about him prior. There is something prior in the movie, because you hear the radio report about the grave robber. You don't have that in the book.
I do want to say, we're all praising it pretty highly. We do say that there's some things wrong with it. I do want to give a different perspective here. Where is it? Let me find you, my friend Kelly's. If I put it on here, which I think I did. Yeah, here it is. Her comment on my Discord. Sorry that I have to look so close at the screen to see what I'm looking at. I look like a blind person. All right, so my friend Kelly, she has a wonderful YouTube channel, and she's also on Instagram. This is her Instagram handle as well. You could find her at Kelly Hooked on Books. She says, this is my least favorite King. Too much inner dialogue on top of other things. So she doesn't like it very much, and I know other people who DNF'd it. People in my Discord who DNF'd the book. Mostly they DNF'd it because it was hard subject matter, more so than thinking it was badly written or something. And I want to read and shout out more people saying stuff about the ratings.
Oh, Jamie gave it a 4 movie.
The movie a 4
plus 4 stars for me, but
she'd given the book a 4 as well. So she gave it basically the same. DJANGOESQUE says Gerald's Game is the only Stephen King book I DNF'd. That's a powerful statement. So what didn't you like about it?
That's what I want to know.
I want to know why.
Was it content?
Was it content, or was it because it was too slow? It was a slow. Like, let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear them, and we'll read them. So yeah, I could see that. Also, by the way, people are shouting out that the audiobook was good. Jamie listened to the audiobook, and Lindsay Krause, I think I'm saying that right. Krause. Probably Krause, narrated the audiobook, and it was great. So she said that the degloving part with the hand was really good with the audio, like the hard to hear.
I don't know.
I'm glad I could just read it and like skim.
I
don't think I would have,
because I think it would be as bad as watching it.
And that's why I think the movie affected me more, because the book, I did skim that part a little bit. I was like, blah, 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 like really quick. It's like I'm doing a half-assed version of reading by doing that.
Well, I mean,
I was scared.
But I have to say that the thing about it is Stephen King kind of gave his blessing on it. After watching an early cut of the film.
Oh, the movie, yes.
The movie. King tweeted the following. This was on February 10th of 2017. Saw a rough cut of Mike Flanagan's Gerald's Game yesterday. Horrifying, hypnotic, terrific. It's going to freak you out. So he was pleased with it. And also, just to know, Mike Flanagan wanted to do another adaptation of either Dr. Sleep or Lizzie's story. And he actually did Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, and I love Dr. Sleep.
I love Dr. Sleep too.
I thought it was a great adaptation, and I thought he walked a great line between paying homage to Stanley Kubrick's The Version and also still being accurate and paying homage to, obviously, the King book itself.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of differences between the book and the film in general. So to kind of play to both strengths, the book and the movie adaptation that King used to not like, but he gave his blessing for Flanagan to kind of, reference. I think that was awesome. And Flanagan did a great job with Dr. Sleep. But we'll talk about more about
Yeah, well, I mean, I have
bit.
to say kudos to Mike Flanagan for being able to adapt this, because I never thought it could be adapted, just because of everything that is going on in Jesse's mind. I want to talk about some little Easter eggs and then about the actors, because I'm an actor and I like all that stuff.
I know. One really quick, he says the reason he DNF'd too slow. Flick forward 100 pages, she still was handcuffed to the bed. So I thought that was enough of that.
Yeah.
I understand the slowness because I struggled too. I really did struggle with that. But give us the Easter eggs.
Okay, so one Easter egg is there's a copy of the book Moonlight Man on the shelf above the bed in Gerald's game.
I didn't
know if you caught that or not. Maddie in Hush is the author of Midnight Mass. The book she is typing in the book.
Oh,
yes.
Also,
That Hush was directed by Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan is also married to Maddie, which is
so. But guys, by the way, Kat is referencing a movie called Hush, which we watched for our summer slasher marathon last year in 2021. We both came to the conclusion that we didn't really feel like it was 100% a slasher.
No.
However, it was still a mostly enjoyable movie if you don't think of it as a slasher, in my opinion. If you think of it as just a good, like, kind of a thriller type of movie, it's a great film. It does make you feel tense. So Maddie,
who's played by Kate Segal. Kate Segal is married to the director Mike Flanagan. Okay. Kate Segal plays Maddie in the movie Hush.
So she's the main character.
She's an author, and she is writing the story Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass is what appears in the book. That's the little Easter egg that's placed there. Also, Mike Flanagan created a TV show called Midnight Mass.
Yes, and it's very popular right now on Netflix.
So just to let you know, that's the two.
I didn't realize Midnight Mass. I forgot that was an allusion.
Well, when I saw it, I was like, I've seen that book before. Where did I do it? So of course, I had to dig.
Yeah.
I have to go down the rabbit hole.
You are so better at that than me. That is great. We wouldn't have any in-depth stuff if it wasn't for Kat right now.
Okay. So then that led me down to another Easter egg that I have no idea, but it prompted me to go look. Her headboard in the movie that she's, handcuffed to, that headboard in the bed, is the exact mirror from a movie called Oculus that was also directed by Mike Flanagan. I have not seen that.
I've seen Oculus, yeah.
Okay, so the mirror is the headboard.
Wow, okay.
Can you believe that?
No.
It is. Now, there is a Dark Tower reference in the movie, not in the book. Okay, Gerald says to her, everything dies, all things serve the beam. That reference is from the Dark Tower because the 6 beams that hold together the 7 worlds of the Dark Tower, every beam has 2 animals guarding each beam. So there was even somebody who was trying to make a stretch. Was the dog the guardian?
I see.
I don't know about that. But this kind of places Gerald's game in the Dark Tower realm.
Right. The movie version, right? You said
the movie. This was not mentioned at all in the book. Right. It was only in the movie. So that is Mike Flanagan taking liberties and
putting stuff in. Yes. Little hidden stuff.
Yes. So as far as actors go, Jessie is played by Carla Gugino. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Who started acting around 1988 to the present. She's been in several different films. In fact, she was also in Mike Flanagan's. He likes to rehire his actors. So I'm going to tell you how they're connected. He hired her also to play Olivia Crane in The Haunting of Hill House, which is a 2018 movie. So she's in that. Gerald is played by Bruce Greenwood. He started acting in 1977, and he's still acting just like Carla is. And Bruce Greenwood was Dr. John Dalton in Dr. Sleep.
Oh, okay. So he's hiring people for multiple things.
That's what I'm saying. Mike Flanagan is the director of Hush and Dr. Sleep, as well as a slew of other, films. And Jessie's father, Tom, played by Henry Thomas of E.T. fame, which made me sad.
Made me sad too. I can't believe you told me that. I'm watching that this year.
He is also in The Haunting of Hill House. He plays Hugh Crane. He is also Lloyd the bartender in Dr. Sleep.
So I didn't recognize him from any of these films.
Henry Thomas and Mike Flanagan are friends somehow.
They must be, yeah.
Jessie's mother, whose name was Sally, Kate Siegel plays Sally. She also plays Maddie in Hush, and she also plays Theodora Crane in The Haunting of Hill House. And of course, she's married to Mike Flanagan, so I guess she gets preferential treatment.
I guess.
Carol Strocon plays the Moonlight Man, aka Raymond Andrew Jobert.
Mm-hmm.
He is a Dutch actor. He's about 7 foot tall. He's been
Wow.
acting since 1978, and it was by fluke. He was discovered on the streets of LA. His first role was in Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which is a Beatles movie.
Yeah, wow.
And somehow he was on the street or whatever, and they were like, "We need you to be in here." And that started off. He's still acting present day. Something about him, they mention in the book that the Moonlight Man suffers from acromegaly.
Acromegalia? No, acromegaly. I guess that's what.
Acromegaly.
Okay.
Okay. And that's why his height and facial features, they talk about that in the book, that he suffered from that.
And they talk about it in the movie too, about how it makes his arms really long, like hang down to like his knees, essentially.
Well, it is a disorder that results from excess growth hormone. That's your pituitary gland. And he actually suffers from that in real life. The initial symptom is typically enlargement of hands and feet, also enlargement of forehead, jaw, and nose. 3 per 50,000 people are affected by this.
That's actually kind of a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And most commonly diagnosed in middle age. Wow. And I discovered that there were other famous people that also have this condition. And one of them is Andre the Giant.
Of course, someone I know very well. Yeah.
And an actor. Paul Benedict, he was an actor. He was the English neighbor in the show The Jeffersons. And I don't know if you ever watched The Jeffersons.
Yeah. I just don't remember the character, though.
Ted Cassidy, who is also an actor, he played Lurch on the TV show The Addams Family. He suffered from it. Also, Carol Strocum played Lurch in the Addams Family movies from the 90s.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
And then Tony Robbins, he's a writer and also motivational speaker. He also has
lots
this.
Of surprising things.
So I was pretty surprised about that, but there were several people that they talked about that had that. I had never heard of it before.
I know about Andre the Giant. I mean, he's his forehead was kind of like that for sure. And he lived like a less long life.
Yes,
they create problems.
They did say that sometimes it can be like 10 years short on your life, and it also has something to do with you can have tumors on your pituitary gland, and that is why Ted Cassidy ended up having an issue with it, the one who played Lurch, and he also played Tarzan, and he acted in quite a few other things. He ended up having complications from that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I just found that, interesting,
so many connections.
That there was so many connections with that. Also James Flanagan, who happens to be Mike Flanagan's brother, he was in the film Haunting of Hill House.
Isn't that the show on Netflix?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
He was the funeral director there, and he was also Diesel Dog in Dr. Sleep.
Oh.
He was also in Gerald's Game.
So literally, he's just like, I want all my actors
what
in
I'm
every
saying
movie.
is, and then think about it, because Hush was 2016. The only person in it was Kate Siegel.
Basically.
Because there was hardly any actors in that film.
Right, it was like 2 or 3.
But then think about it. Gerald's Game was 2017, Haunting of Hill House 2018, Dr. Sleep 2019.
So yeah, he just kept making
So the relationships that he has between these people.
That's really cool.
But I did think that was pretty interesting. And like I said, kudos to Mike Flanagan for being able to turn it into a film. And honestly, I have to say, I do think it was better that he did not make it as graphic and, it was still terrible, but the circumstances, but I'm glad it wasn't.
You don't
visually,
have to read every detail. You don't have to see it on the screen, all the details you read.
I'm glad it wasn't as visually horrific as it was.
That would have been hard. It's always harder for me to watch something in a movie personally than read it. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I just said that I didn't even read the whole handcuff scene complete. Like, where I was really focusing on every single word. I kind of was like la fast, but I still typically have an easier time reading like stuff like that.
Yeah, Benjamin says Midnight Mass is so good.
Which
I have not seen that.
I've heard that it's good from a lot of people. So So many Easter eggs, Jamie says. Yeah, thank you, Kat, for all those Easter eggs. Ashley loves Dr. Sleep, loved the film and the book. So did I. That's actually one of the books I actually did read of King's. So
Yeah, I loved
I'm
it.
accomplishing more and more King reads. And I will say, to piggyback off of what you said, it won't be in my favorite King books, Gerald's Game.
It won't be in your top 10.
No way. No.
Mm-mm.
It won't be in my top 10. I don't know if it would be, I'm going to have to read more and more. I think this is my 8th one, I think, as of right now. So will it even wind up in my top 20 once I keep going? Probably not.
I think the struggle I have with it, it's not so much because I do think it was well written.
Mm-hmm.
I think the struggle is the content.
To me, I just feel like the pacing and where I was when reading it, I can't get over how I felt. Like I knew I wasn't excited to keep turning. And that's what's holding me up from giving it a higher rating.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about it, I'm like, yeah. So in that case, that's what makes me struggle. So we'll have to see if I ever want to go back. I don't know if I would want to, because I have a pretty good memory. I might remember it too much. Whereas you didn't remember half the big things.
Yeah, I did not.
You read it
so
before,
maybe I blanked it out because it was terrible.
You didn't remember the dog. You didn't remember the Moonlight Man. You didn't remember the abuse. That's like the whole story.
Well, that's because all of those things were terrible.
They are terrible.
I mean, everything, all of that was terrible.
It's just like, could I forget those big details? I don't think so. That's why I'd be like, I know what's coming.
Okay, that's like 30 years ago.
Why am I typing? I know, I was trying
30
to 30
years ago, and
that is a long time.
And I have read a lot of other King books.
That's true.
I think sometimes I prefer the monsters. The vampires, the werewolves.
Yeah, the creepy
Not
books.
the human monsters.
Sometimes I do like kind of the supernatural. I'm a big supernatural fan of things like I
do too, because kind of, if you think about it, I mean, the odds of a vampire coming to get you are slim to none, even though the little creepy brother in Salem's Lot still freaks me out today.
But so
I'm 53 years old, and I just fear that one day, as I'm looking out of my back door window, that little creepy kid's going to be out there. Let me in, and I'm going to have a heart attack.
So that is, like I said, that is scary.
But that is scary to me.
But not as scary as something that could actually happen. Like the misery stuff. Or
yes,
this,
yes. I like.
So in a way, you almost like those other things better.
Yeah,
even though
because
they're so
the odds of
that kid.
That
kid ain't visiting.
I mean,
you.
Rationally, that kid is not going to visit me.
I don't think.
The Moonlight Man might.
I'm gonna hire some
cowboy.
kid to go out.
If you do that,
I'm just kidding.
If I'm missing from another live stream, you'll know it's because Kelsi put me in the hospital.
I'm not gonna hire anybody. That's so mean. Somebody's outside your window, Kelsi. You would know it was coming. So anyway, I'm not gonna do it now.
Actually, just talking about that, really, if you think about it, my husband forgot a bag of seed. It had like seeds and peanuts and stuff like that he feeds the squirrels and the birds or whatever out there. Well, this particular bag he got from Walmart had bugs in it, so he wasn't going to use it. So he just put it outside, and he meant to go put it out like on the compost or something like that. Well, he forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting one night, it was like kind of getting dark. It wasn't quite dark yet. And I kept hearing something by the window in the kitchen. Well, at first I thought it was my cat swatting at the window, because sometimes if there's a lizard or something out there, she like swats thinking she can get it through the window.
Right.
Well, it just kept on, and then I heard something fall and clang, clang, and I'm like, what is that? It was a squirrel. A squirrel
but
had
you
come
thought it
up,
could be
and I'm just
something.
like, what is that out there? What is it?
It's a squirrel. Squirrel. Oh, I do want to tell you guys about our read for March. We might as well promote that so people can join in if they want. All right, guys. So this is all my fault. So if you're unhappy with the choice for March, you can blame me. Let me get it up here on the slide.
Because Kelsi loves corn and cheese.
Well, my interest is piqued. So if you guys liked reading along Gerald's Game with us and you liked watching the movie, well, maybe you want to read and watch the March pick with us, which is the Langoliers. And technically this is a short story that is in a larger bind up. Do you remember the name of the bind up it's in?
Yeah, it's in the
Is it
4
everything?
Past Midnight.
Oh, 4 Past Midnight. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty much considered a novella, more
yes.
so than a short story. It's about 200 and something
Well,
pages.
I actually found a standalone edition. I'll show you guys. I actually found that when I was book shopping with Cameron Chaney up in Ohio. Luckily, it was right there, and I was like, I need this book for March, so I picked it up. But also, there is a very cheesy made-for-TV movie adaptation of this story that is basically very notorious for being terrible. Scaring the little girl? That's like a famous quote from it. I have seen the adaptation, but it's been many years. So yes, it might seem like torture to you guys, but we are going to read The Langoliers, and we're going to watch the TV adaptation. We're going to talk about it in March. And we've got a date set. So if you guys are interested in doing this, you have until Sunday, March 27th. We're going to have our live stream at 2 p.m. Central Time, just like we did today. Same day, same time, just different month.
Yes. And Kelsi and I have both seen the movie, but we have not read the novella. So it'll be interesting to see. And I have not seen the movie in a very, very long time, but I do remember it being uber
terrible,
ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, ridiculous and terrible. But the point, like the thing that has me, like, yes, I like cheesy and corn, but my real desire to read this is because I want to see if the book is good, like if this novella, whatever you want to call it, a story, is good.
Right.
Is it good, or is it like one of King's worst? I don't know. That's what I want to see.
Well, I do know for a fact in our magazine that we have
the adaptation is bad.
That it is considered one of his 5 worst. One
Books?
of the 5
stories.
No, films.
Oh yeah. I'm not surprised by that. I'm saying, is the story itself good? I know the adaptation's bad. I'm not worried. I know that going in. I'm okay with it. I'm very excited about it.
Yes, I'm pretty excited about it too.
Wait, Ashley says Willem Dafoe is the narrator for the audio. I have to get this on audio now.
Oh my goodness. Willem Dafoe is one of my favorite actors.
I've got to listen to the audiobook now while I read. Oh my god, Ashley, yes. Okay, this is great. I did not know this. So if you guys want to join along, this is the dates that you need to know. This is the story info, etc., etc. Dates, not dates. But also, I just wanted to shout out, I know a lot of you guys have been participating in our Year of King, but if you've also been somebody who's participating in my channel book club, I've got my announcement for the books we're going to be reading for that as well for March. So in March, my official book club pick is The Troop. It won in the poll. There was like 60 votes in the poll, and The Troop won with like 39 or 40% of the of the votes, which is great. That means it was a lot of people voted for it. So yes, The Troop by Nick Cutter. We'll be discussing that, and the live stream will be Thursday, March 31st at 7 p.m. Central Time. Hopefully some of you guys will come. Even if you've already read the book, join us for the discussion. Also, the second book that almost won, the book that receives essentially the second most amount of votes in that poll, was Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door, which Cameron Chaney, I think this is kind of relevant because Cameron Chaney mentioned this book in his review of Gerald's Game. He said he read this book and then he had an easier time with Gerald's Game. This book is notorious for being emotionally hard-hitting, hard to read. If you thought Gerald's Game was hard, Kat, you will never be able to read this.
I won't be able to get
I know about this. It's hard. And even people say you have to be in a good mental space. It's like excruciating to read. So I am going to read this, and not only read it, but I'm going to discuss this on Thursday, April 7th, 7 p.m. Central Time. I know that's kind of going into the next month, but I've got a lot of stuff at the end of March that I have to push the live stream into April. So hopefully you guys are okay with that. But yes, join in on whichever or all if you want to. Yes, so I'm excited about that.
Ashley mentioned, kind of going off topic, I love that King wrote the main character of Dr. Sleep working in hospice care place, because I work as a CNA and have worked a lot of hospice cases, so I could relate.
I know Ashley's told me about that on Instagram, so I really respect that you do that type of stuff, Ashley. I
liked it too, because he was able to help them transition, to go on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like that he was able to use his shine, his ability to do that.
I loved that. That was such a special thing in the book. But yes, guys, I don't want to spoil Dr. Sleep for anyone who hasn't read it, but I do recommend that book. That's a great book. But you got to read The Shining first, of course.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah, very, very
Ashley
good.
said she's probably going to skip The Girl Next Door because it is based around a true crime, and it's the same crime that I have read. Let's Go Play at the Adamses, which is another book that's based on the same exact crime that Ashley is.
Yeah, and you told me not to read that one either.
Well, that one, it's two different. I've heard that The Girl Next Door is a lot more emotionally hard-hitting, and it's a lot more classy, whereas Let's Go Play at the Adamses is more maddening.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to read The Girl Next Door to be able to compare them fairly,
right.
but I have read one of them, and that one I just don't think you'd vibe with. The kids are so maddening, and I know the kids in The Girl Next Door are maddening too, but I think it's just more tasteful in terms of how it's written or whatever.
Right. I just find it's very hard for me to read anything where there's like abuse of women, children, abuse of anybody. But
Yeah,
I mean,
you
it's
would have a hard
different,
time with this, trust me.
for me to even watch something or to. That's why I was a little worried about how they were going to portray the movie Gerald's Game.
On screen,
Because
yeah.
and if you have not read Big Driver, that was extremely hard to read. The movie was tastefully done, but it was still hard to watch.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, especially because you knew you had the backstory for it, and it's just very hard for me to you know, to deal
So
with.
King's what is that collection called again that Big Driver's in?
Full Dark
No
No
Stars. Yes, okay. So Big Driver, the story we're referencing by King, also has abuse. It's in the collection Full Dark No Stars. I do recommend that story. It's a hard-hitting, hard-to-read story, but it's well done.
Mhm.
It makes you think. It makes you like, whoa, contemplate things. Very, very good story overall.
Mhm. Yeah. Again,
Bob Apple said he's going to read Doctor Sleep next. That's the next King book up for him, and he's glad that we said it was good. Yeah, we really we
yeah.
both enjoyed it. Now there are some people who I don't know why. I've seen that there are people who don't like it. I
Like the
love
book
it,
or the movie?
but there's people who don't like one or the other. But I actually seen more people don't like the movie, which I don't understand why.
I actually enjoyed the movie. Rebecca Ferguson plays Rose the Hat, and she does,
I thought she
think,
made
a
her
really great job.
She made her really scary. But
Yes.
yes, Bob Apples, I hope you enjoyed Doctor Sleep. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. If you comment on any of my videos, just like leave what you thought about that.
I
somewhere.
really,
But
I
don't
enjoyed
spoil it.
I
for
enjoyed
anybody.
it too because I had to, of course, go back and read The Shining yet again. I've read it several
I
times.
know we're gonna read it
but
again.
I had
by the
to
way.
read it again so that I could be in the mindset because I didn't know exactly how they were going to start Doctor Sleep. But it was just neat figuring out what happened to Danny Torrance after such a horrific situation.
And if you guys are interested in hearing us talk about that universe, we're going to be rereading The Shining because we've both already read it. We're going to be rereading The Shining in December of 2022 this year.
Yes.
So yes, it's a while away. But I just want you guys to know we are going to be talking about that in depth and multiple adaptations of it. Not just the Kubrick version, but the King approved version. And also the documentary Room 237, which I'm kind of excited about.
Yes.
I've already seen it. And that's more about Kubrick's movie. It's not about King's book. But it does touch on a lot of the differences in Kubrick's film versus King's book. And I think that's really fascinating, and everyone is speculating on why Kubrick did the things he did in the film. So that's why I love that documentary, and Kat's not seen it, so I think it's going to be fun to see her perspective on the movie or the documentary.
Yeah, especially since Stephen King did not like Kubrick's version.
Yeah, which was so surprising of what he allowed for Flanagan to do with Dr. Sleep. Because again, Dr. Sleep literally uses visuals from The Shining.
Yes, I was pretty surprised about that as well, because I wouldn't have
the Kubrick Shining.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought because he had already seen Mike Flanagan's work with Gerald's Game.
So maybe that's why he allowed it, because he knew Flanagan treated his work well. And so he was like, okay, well, I'm going to let him, I guess, pay homage to Kubrick at the same time as paying homage to my book.
It was kind of the same thing with Misery and Stand By Me that Rob Reiner did. Remember, he was not too sure about letting somebody take Misery, adapting that until he saw how well he had done with the previous film.
Right, that's true.
I don't know.
Ben Grimm, and I think you've seen this version of it. Ben Grimm says the version that King likes of The Shining is not good, though. The miniseries version.
Well, and let me tell you about this, Ben. I got the mini version from Netflix, and apparently it was supposed to be 2 discs, and they only had 1. So I've only seen half of it. So I cannot tell you.
Well, are you going to be able to get it?
I don't know.
We got to find a way. Maybe I'll rent it or something. Maybe we'll rent it.
I'm going to figure out where I can get it, even if I have to buy it, or whatever.
If we have to watch it together and I have to rent it or something, we could do that too. We'll see.
I mean, we've done that before. Remember Alone in the Dark?
Yes, I've got it right up there. I have the DVD of Alone in the Dark. Cheesy but wonderful. We watched it together and laughed so hard. I do recommend Alone in the Dark if you like kind of cheesy 80s horror horror movies and stuff. It's so good.
Every
But
once in a while, we do get to watch a movie together, which makes it even more fun.
Silver Bullet.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
wonderful. We did a whole comparison. If you guys like our King book and movie comparisons and contrast conversations, we do have one up about Misery, which we referenced because that was our read last month. And we also have one up about Silver Bullet / Cycle of the Werewolf,
Yes.
which was so fun.
Which was delightful.
And we talk about killer pigs in it. And
Dana.
Dana has a pet pig, and I start talking about haha pigs, and I don't know. Anyway, you got to see it to understand. I'm proud of that chat for sure. But yes, that's our other King chats that are up right now, but many more to come as we're doing this every single month of the year.
Yes.
I'm very excited.
Very
All right,
excited.
so Ben, I have a feeling it'll be bad because I've heard terrible things about the King approved version of The Shining. But as long as I go in knowing that, I'm okay. I'm definitely okay. And also, I didn't know that there was a new Firestarter adaptation. I've never read the book, but this is interesting. He said he saw the preview for the new one and doesn't know about it. Doesn't know how to feel, I'm guessing he means.
Oh, did you see it already?
No,
he
saw
the preview. I heard that they were going to redo it, so I'm curious to see.
You should look up the preview.
I'm curious to see.
I've never read it, so I feel like I have to start reading before I start watching new stuff.
Yeah, I definitely would.
Because I feel like with Misery, I wish I kind of would have read the book first, just because I love the movie, but it kind of made the book less impactful.
Well, the good news about Misery is that they cast the actors really well. I think if we would have watched Gerald's Game before we read the book Gerald's Game, it would have been much harder because the characters were nothing like how they cast.
So it would have been weird to picture Gerald as Gerald,
yes.
because you'd picture that it just happens. You picture the TV version or the movie version when you're reading, and I could not handle picturing him as Gerald. It would be completely different and very hard to do that. But yeah, so we'll have to see. I don't know. I'm gonna wait on Firestarter until I actually read that one, because I'm not gonna keep doing this to where I'm ruining all of King's books for myself in a way. Not ruining them, but it's a different experience when you have already seen the movie.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if they cast really well, no problem.
Yeah.
But if the casting,
The Shining, I had watched the movie first, and I still loved the book. The book never bored me. There was enough differences where I could get through it, and
but I think they cast him really well. I think
not according to King.
Well, not according to King, but I do think the casting was well done, in my opinion.
In my opinion.
But I do think, and this is just wrapping up Gerald's Game, I do think the movie adaptation and the book, you've got two different kind of stories in a sense because of how the actors in the movie were portrayed as opposed to in the book.
I agree. It is almost, in a way, almost like two different stories or two different veins in the same story.
It's two different stories. I mean, it's two different, two different perceptions of the same story. It's almost like two different people were telling the story.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I will say, so my closing thoughts on Gerald's Game, thank you all for giving your thoughts too. I love hearing what you guys have to say and everything. So what I thought was that I thought the book was decent. I thought it was powerful, hard-hitting, but I did like the movie just a little bit more, which I know is kind of blasphemy for all of you book lovers. This is just me. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion. Loved hearing you guys' opinion specifically. So I think I'm going to go with the Langoliers audiobook. I'm so glad you told me about that, Ashley.
Yes.
That's going to be so much fun. So I will also say, before we go, if you guys are interested, I do have a Discord channel. There are places to talk about the King picks. I have not made a space for the Langoliers yet, but I will. Probably by March 1st, there'll be an area where everyone could talk about, and there's a way to hide spoilers. It's like use two vertical lines before and after text you want to hide so that you don't spoil it for other people. So if you're thinking about you want to discuss the book with people, but you still want to be safe with spoilers, Discord is a great way because you could hide spoilers. And that when people finish the book, they can click on your blacked out text and they could read it. So I do encourage you guys to go check out my Discord. It's linked in the description of this video. And it's the Discord for my book club, the Midnight Book Society. So it has my book club, discussion areas, but it also has me and Kat's Year of King discussion areas too. So it's got everything if you guys are into, chatting about books with other people. I really appreciate you guys. All right, so that's it. We're kind of wrapping up. It's been fun, guys. It's been tough to talk about some of these things that were presented in Gerald's Game, but I think talking about it makes me appreciate the book even more. So I'm glad we did this chat, Kat, and I'm glad we're doing this Year of King.
Me too.
Your favorite king.
My favorite king.
That exists. All right. Thank you guys again for this time. That's it for us. But till next time, what can they do, Kat?
Keep on killing it.
Keep on killing it. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.